Hello class of Social 20ep. Today we will be teaching you about the journey and life of the most influential person ever to live in Scotland. His name, John Knox. So let's get this party started. Thank you, Samson. So, the life of John Knox starts off in Scotland. He was born in the small town of Haddington in 1505. Now you wonder, who is this John Knox everyone's talking about? Well, he is one of the most important and influential players in the Scottish Reformation. He is accredited to be the father of Presbyterianism. Now, Presbyterianism is a form of Protestant church government in which the church is administered locally by the minister with a group of elect elders of equal rank, so it's more level and not just one person gets too much power, such in the Catholic Church where the Pope is the head and resides over all the churches. Not much is known about his early life, so we can skip that part. But the stuff that is known reveals that he had an education in the scholastic method and was educated at St. Andrew's University. From there, he trained how to be a Catholic priest. He then became a priest at St. Andrew's Church. John Knox did not agree with the ideas and teachings of the Roman Catholic Church, and he always had thoughts on becoming a Protestant. And finally, in 1547, he was called up to be a priest in the Protestant ministry. John Knox never recorded the exact date on when he took the leap from being a Roman Catholic to a Protestant. Therefore, we cannot specify a date. However, it is known that his conversion of faith was helped with the meeting of George Wishart. George Wishart was a prominent figure in the Protestant movement in Scotland. John Knox decided to become his bodyguard because the Catholics and Protestants were on edge at that time. They both traveled around Scotland, and Knox protecting his mentor with a two-hand wielding sword, striking down anyone who would harm George. While Knox was chopping Christians down left and right, Wishart went around preaching and converting people to Protestantism, until a fateful day when they were both captured by Cardinal David Beaton. The Cardinal was a Catholic, and he did not appreciate at all Knox and Wishart traveling around Scotland and chopping down Christians. Knox was spared, but he wanted to go with Wishart. Wishart responded with, "One is sufficient for one sacrifice." Wishart stood before Cardinal Beaton at trial. Unfortunately, he was found guilty for heresy, and his punishment was to be hanged and then burned. John Knox watched as his friend went away. Side note, Cardinal Beaton lived in St. Andrew's Castle. When other followers of George Wishart found out that the Cardinal burned their mentor, they were furious and mounted an assault on the castle and killed the Cardinal. Once the Cardinal was dead, they took over the castle and declared it to be Protestant. Then they went to John Knox and asked him to be a minister at the castle. Knox blindly agreed and became the head Protestant minister at St. Andrew's Castle. I said blindly agrees because it's in only a single year, the French who were Catholic decided to take the castle and the rebellious Protestants who defied the Pope. They set sail to St. Andrews. The problem for John Knox was that the French were Catholic, and him and his followers were not so Catholic. Once the French ships were at the castle, the Protestants needed an idea. They sent a message to England that the time was Protestant and did not listen to the Pope, that they needed assistance. Unfortunately, it took too long. They did eventually arrive, but it was too late. The French totally and utterly destroyed the castle. They got into combat with a few Protestants, but it ended quickly as the Protestants were not ready and did not have enough numbers to defend the castle. John Knox and a few of his followers were then taken into the French galley ships, and they had to row on the boat for 19 grueling months, until the day of their release. Once John Knox was released, he would head out to Berwick, England, and then he got an invitation to be a preacher at London. He packed his bags and left to London. Life at this point was pretty sweet for John Knox. He didn't have to worry about the Catholics persecuting him because England was Protestant, and he could live and preach in peace. Until the day Queen Mary I came to power, also known as Bloody Mary. The problem with her is that she was Catholic, and John Knox was not so Catholic. Also, she was pretty crazy, and was known to kill a lot of Protestants during her reign. Now, John Knox was in a dilemma. He had pressure from two sides, from the new Queen of England and the Catholics who did not really like him. The Queen wanted John Knox dead, but John Knox had other ideas. He fled to Frankfurt, Germany, where he became a minister, and then he traveled to Geneva in Switzerland. He was impressed at the teachings of the Reformation and it impacted people from all over Europe. He was also a witness to the countless massacres of the Protestant people at the hands of Queen Mary I. He was so in shock that he decided to write the first blast of the trumpet against the monstrous regime of women. He was certain that only men should be in power. The book included references to the Bible, for example, that Adam came before Eve. The power to rule only comes from God, and wrote many controversial statements like, if the ruler did not follow the true religion, they can be overthrown. Eventually, John Knox decided to return to Scotland permanently. Meanwhile, in Scotland, the population hated the Catholic, and in 1560, the Scottish Parliament passed laws banning Mass and removed the Pope's power in Scotland. John Knox then wrote the Scottish Confession of Faith with 5 other men, all named Knox. It was a book stating the new religion and rules of Scotland. Then Mary, Queen of Scots, returned to Scotland, and her and Knox became good friends. He tried to convert her to Protestantism, but she refused. Knox then lived out the rest of his life in Scotland, preaching until his death in 1572. Knox never participated in any armed rebellions, but his works gave basis to armed revolts in Scotland, Netherlands, and later in France. Fun fact, today John Knox is buried under a parking lot in St. Giles Cathedral, parking spot 23 in Edinburgh, Scotland. I hope you enjoyed our presentation about the life of John Knox. Thanks.